Hello and welcome to Geoscope on Politics Social. I'm Graham Hughes and I'm joined as always by Ollie Bowlerhatman. How you doing, Ollie? Up there, down there, somewhere in Yorkshire.
Yeah, I'm all right.
You alright?
I'm,
Good.
I'm all right.
We've got Sarah, we've got Hannah, Manking Tube, we've got Graham, we've got Saz, and we've got Sphere Lance in the chat. Hello. If anyone else wants to join in, just hit the subscribe button and wait for approximately 1 minute and you will have cake, or at least be able to comment and stuff. So we're talking about, obviously, it's the 4-year anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine today. The 4-year anniversary of the 3-day special military operation, Ollie.
Yep. 3-day special military operation, and we are, yeah.
Day 1,400.
4 years, yeah.
How many days of Ukraine war? Let's have a look. Timeline. No, why is, oh, there you go. 1,418. 1,418 days. Oh no, that was last month. That was on the 18th. So it's longer than that.
Yep. So you need to add a couple more days, but yeah. Close enough.
Then again, I mean, seriously though, it's the real first invasion of Crimea and Donbass was in 2014. It's been going on for 12 years now. 12 years, mate. Since Donald, what's his name? Not Donald Trump, the other one, Vladimir Putin, spat his dummy out the pram because the person he wanted to lead, lead Ukraine into being a submissive vassal state of Russia. He got kicked out of office.
Yeah, and of course we've got to remember the infamous Russian propaganda where apparently Boris Johnson led a commando raid against Russian forces.
Yes,
like out of all like the ridiculous Russian propaganda I have seen, that takes the cake. The idea that Boris Johnson is somehow this like secret like James Bond, skilled figure is laughable beyond belief. But that's what they put out as a piece of propaganda. They actually put that out as a serious thing. But there you go.
Well, they also said that they had to defend all the Russian-speaking people from the Nazis.
Yep.
So does that mean that Australia is allowed to invade Britain because, like, of all the English-speaking people here need to be defended from like Reform UK
or Canada or New Zealand?
It's funny how Farage seems to be keeping his head down at the moment. Have you noticed that? Not much sign of Farage these days. Where's he gone? Since the Epstein files
again, it's odd. It's odd. He has done a bit of a runner. But yeah, he has disappeared a bit, hasn't he? Obviously, it's quite odd, but yeah.
But going back,
although he's still doing his TV appearances.
Oh, is he?
On other channels, but yeah.
But yeah, going back to the 2014 Maiden Revolution in February 2014, there was up to 800,000 protesters in Kyiv saying, "Get rid of this guy. We don't want him as our leader." And the Russians framed it as like an American-backed coup.
Yep. CIA-backed coup. Which, if you actually listen to the quote leaked phone call, the American diplomats at the time were like saying, "Oh no, just agree."
Yeah.
Just agree to what Russia wants. That's what they were saying at the time. That was completely opposite once again of what they were saying at the time. It's this war has been a example of like a serious attempted push at misinformation to try and grab people's attentions, to try and like turn attention away from the war and like basically try to stop people supporting Ukraine ultimately at the end of the day, because it has been the supply of weapons that they have got that have massively sort of helped them out on this one. That you look at all the stuff and the equipment they've got, when they've used it, they put it to absolutely fantastic effect. It's been unbelievable. Like the stuff and the military achievements that they've pulled off through this war. You are probably going to, anyone, military wise, we will probably be studying this war for a long time to come. Just for its effects that it's had, the fact that we've gone back to an almost a very technical World War One currently at the moment.
Well, no, it's not. It's a weird thing, isn't it? Because like the trench warfare and the tanks, okay, that's a bit World War One. But then you've got these drones, and one of the things that
that's where the technical element comes into it.
On the footage that you see now of these fields full of optic fibers, it looks like a giant spiders have just taken over. I mean, the amount of cleanup that's going to be needed to be done at the end of this is going to be absolutely horrific. It's worth mentioning. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the mines; they are still clearing mines from World War One. In France, they are reckoning that it's going to take just as long, if not longer, to clean up a lot of the mines, because remember, Russians have been using cluster bombs in this, and they look like little plastic. Like a little plastic thing, and they could be very easily confused for toys. But they are going to take decades to clean up all the mines and stuff like from this conflict. It's going to take years to clean it up all properly.
But Yanukovych, the guy who was the president, who was Putin's puppet up till 2014. I mean, the entire parliament voted him out. Like the parliament just said, get rid of him. He tried to change the constitution of Ukraine, and then they had this uprising. They changed the constitution back to its original form from 2004. And then a guy called Poroshenko took over. So people think that it was Vladimir Zelensky who took over.
Yeah, no, there were like 3 elections between then and
yeah, but it wasn't. It was Poroshenko. He was actually the president until 2019, dealing with this invasion by Russia. First of all, of Crimea, and the Donbass, but now it's obviously spread massively. But I've got to say, the resilience of the Ukrainian people is just absolutely inspiring to see, because what I think the big mistake that Vladimir Putin probably made is he thought, well, first of all, he thought Trump was going to win in 2020, and he didn't. And I think that put the kibosh on his plans for a little bit. Also, there was COVID, so that sort of skewed it a little bit. But by the time he launched his invasion, his full-scale invasion, the Ukrainians were ready because of the first invasion of Ukraine and of Donbass. And there's an argument that if he had played his cards differently, he might have actually been successful in this, because the Ukrainians wouldn't have been ready. But they were ready. They were ready. And when everyone else in the world was saying, "Oh no, they'll never invade," they're just mashing troops around the border. They're not actually going to invade. And which is something that Nigel Farage said repeatedly.
Yeah, and George Galloway.
Yeah, was it? I think Jeremy Corbyn might have said that as well. Those tankies on the left fuck me off.
Hassan Piker also did it. They said that as well, that an invasion of Ukraine will never happen either. So
who did?
Yeah,
who did? Who said that?
Hassan Piker, one of the biggest left-wing Twitch streamers there is on there.
Okay. Yeah. So do they get any penalty for being so wrong? Do people stop watching them and stop believing what they have to say?
No, he's still one of the biggest lefty streamers on Twitch.
Oh, how do I get more viewers? Do I have to just be more of a twat? I have to get more stuff wrong.
Well, you have. Oh, well, if you look at, you have to be more like a himbo.
A himbo.
Yeah.
What, you say I've got to be more sexy? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what you have to do. That's what brings him in. That's what brings him in, Graham.
I've been working all day. I just attached a TV to the wall. I'm a bit worried because this is an old fucking house. And when you're drilling into a wall, and you're like, this is a bit easy.
Shouldn't be this easy.
Shouldn't be this easy. But yeah, I gave it a good tug. Tried to pull it off the wall, and it didn't come off straight away. So yeah, it should be good for a year or so. And halfway through an episode of EastEnders, just going to fall off the wall. Brilliant.
Actually, one Angry Pagan brings up a good point, actually, in the chat. There have been a lot of environmental factors that has been caused by Russia from this war.
Yes.
not only just the mine clear up and the like, unexploded
Yeah,
ordnance that there's going to be have to remove. Russian factories in Russia have been dumping thousands of like gallons of chemicals
yeah,
into like the Dnipro River, which runs right through Ukraine,
yeah,
which for many people is a main drinking source. So this is
yeah.
something else that Ukraine has had to deal a
It,
lot
it,
with
it
throughout
yeah.
this war as well.
It's the same bunch, isn't it, that want to destroy the planet? They really do want to watch the world burn. Literally, they want to poison the rivers, poison the air. They want to make the poison. They want to poison the sea so that everything in the sea is dead. They're just, I mean, these megalomaniacs with so much power. It's really quite horrific at this day and age. When we thought we were moving towards more democratic structures, and the age of the strongman is back when
Mm.
Putin and Trump in particular have the power to disrupt this many people's lives, ruin this many
Oh,
people's
and
lives.
yeah, the Kherson Dam as well.
Yes.
Yeah, lest we forget that happened as well. Which almost led down to a meltdown in Chernobyl again.
Yeah, the
Or not
Zaporizhia, the
not in Chernobyl,
Zaporizhia,
the
the
Zaporizhia
Zaporizhia
power plant.
power plants. Yeah,
Because
but
guess what?
also
Yeah, that needed the water from there to
the
that. So,
protective dome over
mm,
over the Chernobyl site that's been damaged,
yep,
and now radiation is spewing
yep.
out from that hole that's there. I mean, just everything about this is just horrible, and the Russians have done themselves no favors. But I mean, there are still people out there who think that this is perfectly legitimate. What Russia has done, they've gone in and they've invaded a neighboring country. They've kidnapped tens of
Yep.
thousands of children from Mariupol and other cities in the east, and they've taken them to Russia. No one knows
Yep.
where they are now. They could be being
Yeah,
raped. They could be being
still don't
eaten.
know where
They
they
could
are.
be
Yep.
being beaten in a cellar somewhere. We don't know what's happening to them. And I do find it a bit interesting, Ollie, that some of the people who shout loudest about Gaza don't seem to have a problem with what is happening in Ukraine, which seems a bit like, how can you be concerned? I'm not saying what about here. I think you should be
Yeah.
concerned about both things, absolutely. But they don't seem to give a shit about the suffering, the real human suffering that's happening in Ukraine at the moment.
Yeah, I think this comes down to it's the but isn't America the what's called the America bad argument, that if America does anything, regardless of what it does, even if it's like an act of like pure altruism, that for some way, shape, or form it must be viewed as through the lens as like, oh, America bad, it's some sort of evil plot in this scheme that they're doing. And I think that's what has driven, I think, a lot of the very bad left-wing takes on Ukraine that have ended up basically, oh yeah, support Russia in a really bizarre way. And then of course you've got people like Corbyn, who again he's a committed pacifist, so you can understand in a way why he would be against war, but we're past the point where the pacifism of someone like Jeremy Corbyn stops being, we understand you're against war, but Ukrainians now are fighting a war, which we have seen constantly from the
Yes.
stuff that Russia is demanding. Because remember, they've just put out this again today, that even after 4 years of war, they still have not achieved their objectives, and that they intend to continue on until they achieve those set objectives, along,
Yeah.
of course, with Vladimir Putin blaming Western elites for the start of this war, when he was the one who ordered this invasion.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Wild.
It is. It is. It's incredible. Like someone doing something horrible is bad. Like that is it. And the Ukrainians are having to defend themselves with everything they've got, and that they're being what the rest of the world is doing, I think, is just trying to humiliate the Ukrainian people. I mean, why this is still going on 4 years after the fact is just mind blowing.
Mm.
Ukraine was invaded by its fucking neighbor. We didn't stand for that when it was Kuwait, when it was this country that no one knows where it is. Not even the people who live in Kuwait know where it is. And it's in any case, I'll let you know where it is. It's on the end of the Shatalara waterway as you go into the Persian Gulf. But it's thousands of miles away. And what happens in Kuwait has no direct consequence on me personally. But we've now got hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees living in this country who have now established lives in this country over the last 4 years as a direct result of the war here. And I think we've got to intervene in Iraq invading its neighbor. Why aren't we doing more? Why? Like at this point, it's been 4 fucking years. If Russia had some magic bloody 8-ball or ace up its sleeve, wouldn't it have used it by now? Like, wouldn't it have nuked something? Or, you know, if nukes were working, wouldn't it have?
Well, that is the argument all the time. It is true. Something you have to bear in mind. They do have nuclear weapons. Yes. What state they're in is
no. I'll tell you what state they're in, Ollie.
But we don't know.
So if you're telling me, right, if you were Vladimir Putin, right, and you're sitting on all these tactical nukes that you can use on a battlefield, right, so not the city leveling ones, not like a Tsar bomber or someone, but just like a small nuke that could take out quite a few fucking people, right, at least a few towns, right. Would you not just set one off in the middle of the fucking Black Sea as a demonstration and go, look at what we've got?
Well, they have done. They have resorted. They've gone back to. They have announced they're retesting nuclear weapons.
They've announced it.
Yeah,
they've got no footage.
I believe they have done a nuclear weapons test. At least I believe they have. I know they talked about it. I don't know if they actually went ahead with it.
I don't think they did, Ollie. I think they just talked about it because they're like, oh, we've got nuclear weapons. Don't attack us because we'll get you with our nukes. And like, I don't think they've got.
But it's still too risky to do in many ways. But there's also the reason why Putin himself hasn't used them is because if he did, then I think you would see a lot stronger pushback.
Yeah, but he didn't have to use them
against Russia. So there is that.
He doesn't have to use them against Ukraine. He just has to set one off in the middle of the ocean and just say, look what we got. Don't fuck with us. But they haven't done that. Because they haven't tested any nuclear weapons since the early 90s, because all the ones they've got are fucked. Because they haven't looked after them. They've got no money to look after them. And everyone who's been paid to look after them has just pocketed the money and then fucked off to the pub to drink more vodka.
Apparently in the chat, there was apparently a test last year and it went wrong. The rocket landed about 15 seconds after it left the launcher.
Cool. Yeah, like I say, like that, if they had a tactical advantage in any way, they would have shown their hand by now. It's been 4 years. What are we waiting for? I'd just say, one night, go out, every single bomber in Europe, every single bomber in the NATO countries of Europe, go out one night and just bomb the front lines. That's it. Take them out. Or 1,300 miles of it.
Again, if we could probably do that, I'm not gonna lie. We definitely have a lot more air power. I think than this, and I think our air defenses, our own airplanes and missiles, I think are a lot more sophisticated, as has been proved many times by the Ukrainians using them. But it's still not a. You're still rolling the dice. If that happened, Putin could decide, well, I'm just gonna,
do what? They
demoed like a couple of years ago the Trident nuclear warhead, which is a nuclear torpedo that they would have set off in like the North Atlantic. That would cause a huge nuclear tidal wave, essentially, all over like the coast of Britain, Central Europe, the Nordic states as well.
Again,
Denmark would be.
Could they not have done a demo in the what's left of the Aral Sea? Do you know what I mean? I know it's only a puddle now since the Soviets decided to dry it all up. But like, couldn't they just say, "Look what we've got. Look at this. We're going to fuck you up with this. If you don't capitulate and give us the Donbass region and give us Luhansk and Donetsk and Kherson and Zaporizhia, which are the 4 places they want. They want those 4 places and Crimea. They're keeping Crimea." And then they say, "Oh, we'll leave it at that." They won't, but that's what their peace agreement is.
I mean, they always, and they've put out a lot of propaganda of saying that they were going to go all the way around to Odessa as well. That was seen to be always very, very much the plan. That's where they want it to go as well, and go as far as there. So that would mean Ukraine basically becoming landlocked at that point.
Yep. Well,
for that, and they even ran adverts trying to like recruit Russian troops, like, join now, and you get the pick of like beachfront properties in Odessa,
Yeah.
which is weird, a weird advert to run for like military recruitment, but yeah, that's the
Did you
one.
ever
Yeah.
watch Red Dwarf? A bit
No,
before
I
your time.
was no, I was too young.
There's an episode called Polymorph, and it's a parody of Alien, but
Ah,
instead of the alien killing you, it sucks out your emotions. So Lister loses all of his fear, and Rimmer loses his anger, and basically Rimmer turns into Jeremy Corbyn, and he says, "Listen, we need to negotiate with this monster. We need to make a committee, and we need to talk about how we defeat this monster." And he's there with a T-shirt on that says "Give Keisha a chance," and he's smoking a pipe, and he actually looks a bit like a younger Jeremy Corbyn in this show. And Lister is very much no. He picks up a big gun and he says, "Let's get out there and twat it." And I'm very much with Lister on this. I'm just like, fuck him. It's been 4 fucking years. Look at the numbers, right? At least 55,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed. 55,000. That's fucking crazy. That's the independent estimates suggest that maybe up to 200,000 Ukrainian military are dead.
yeah,
And
but
then
there's many more Russians dead from
yes,
this.
but
And
then
many more.
186,000 Russian soldiers, or people fighting for the Russians, not necessarily Russian, military deaths identified by name. 186,000. The military estimates estimate complete total Russian deaths between 243 to 552,000 dead. So it could be as many as 350,000 dead Russians for this. For what? For what? And the combined casualties. This is for Russia and for Ukraine for deaths and injuries. Could be as many as 2 million. 2 million people now. This is for Russia the highest sustained battlefield losses since World War II. And the civilian toll, nearly 15,000 confirmed Ukrainian civilians killed. That's like 5 9/11s. We've had over 40,000 injured. And last year was the deadliest year for civilians since 2022, since the first days of the invasion, when the Russians went in and they butchered families. They just killed civilians. They tortured civilians for fun, for kicks. And Russia has obviously over the winter systematically struck power stations, heating plants, water infrastructure, transport hubs, apartment blocks. And while it's quite obvious if an apartment block gets hit and you can pull the dead bodies out and say, okay, it's 3 people died there, we don't know how many people have died out there or died earlier than they would have done, like elderly people, because they didn't have the heating, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have running water that they needed. And it is just crazy to think that Russia has not made any gains, any substantial gains whatsoever since 2023. In fact, it may have actually lost a bit of territory since then, depending on how well the Ukrainians have been doing this month since he's turned off the Starlink satellites.
The Starlink thing is hilarious. Like they apparently even like used phishing tactics to like get Russians to pass over their emails to like Starlink. They pretended to be tech support apparently as well, to like to trick them into having this stuff.
Yep.
But it's worked incredibly well. I mean,
charge them $5,000 a piece to let them know where their location was.
They were like, hey, oh yeah, give us this amount of money as well, by the way. And it's like, good on you for that. But yeah, the recent counterattack that they've done on this has been incredibly well.
Yeah.
They've basically wiped out in a single day like 3 months worth of like Russian advances, and I believe the counterattack is still ongoing, I believe, at the moment. So I think they've retaken even more land recently on that. So I don't know what the estimate is now on this, but I have seen that the Russians are in quite a big retreat at the moment. So good on them for that once again on this. Massively outperforming everything that everyone suspected they might do from day one
Well, they've
on
been
this.
fighting for their very existence. If Russia wins this war, there's no more Ukraine. They will force Ukrainian children to speak Russian, which is the equivalent of forcing Welsh kids to speak English. You know, that's what they did in Wales for many years. They wouldn't allow Welsh speakers. They didn't allow it. It wasn't allowed to be taught in schools by law. The Welsh language, and this is how empires since forever have dominated and just taken out any kind of opposition, because they've taken over. They've said, no, your culture doesn't exist anymore. Your culture is now our culture. Your church is now our church. Your language is now our language. And this is happening in 2026. That is mind-blowing. That is absolutely mind-blowing. And because it's been going on so long now, everyone's just treating it like, fish and chip paper. It's just like, oh yeah, is that still going on? But it's a daily grind for the people who are living in Ukraine, and daily heartache where people had to uproot their entire lives because of this one man, Vladimir Putin, not wanting to be thrown out of a fucking window.
Yep.
Because of losing Sebastopol as a military base. And also not wanting more countries to join NATO, which is hilarious because obviously Sweden and Finland joined as a result of this. But yeah, what are the key developments? We've had the drone revolution, obviously the most profound change in modern warfare through the use of drone technology. There was obviously the case that the caper.
Yeah, they did.
Last year,
they pulled off the absolute.
It was
surprise attack. They managed
fantastic.
to sneak a load of trucks filled with drones like through the
They
border.
got the Russians. They got the Russians to drive them there. They hired Russian drivers and said, "Will you drive this truck over here? We'll give you 500 rubles." And they went, "All right, then, yeah, sure." Fucking hell.
Yeah,
Genius.
I mean, and the Baltic now, because of course Finland and Sweden have joined, is now a NATO lake. At this point,
and they only have this really narrow little bit that they can go through, don't they? If they're coming out of St. Petersburg and they're trying to get into Kaliningrad, they've got this like narrow, tiny little corridor that they can go through.
Yeah, Poland's even more armed to the teeth than ever before. Poland is now the Texas of Europe, basically.
Yeah,
it's armed itself. Because it is chomping at the bit to go in. They've been like, yeah, give us the excuse, and we will gladly go in. They bought a absolute ton of HIMARS after the success in Ukraine by the system there, and they just lined them up around Kaliningrad and just went, oh, there you go. Look at all our fancy new HIMARS, Russia. Don't you want to come and have a go now?
Yeah.
So yeah, Poland is massively so. The entire European defense complex has been, I think, massively reinforced over this situation. I think right at the start of the war, there was a whole scandal in Germany about them having a lack of artillery shells in reserve. They would have apparently the rate that they had been shooting them, Germany would have run out of artillery shells in 2 days. That has now fundamentally changed. Germany is now not only rearming itself, but it's now moving away from there was a lot of hesitancy about conscription and the army and how West and East Germany sort of reintegrated and how that affected the armed forces. That seems to have been completely changed up and switched around that now on that one. So that's good to see. You were seeing joint military defense projects between Ukraine and other countries. So we're involved in one developing long range missiles. We are doing drone development projects. They've got the same situation going on in Germany and France as well. It's really changed a lot of things. And then you've got the whole thing with Russia's lost a lot of its allies. We started off talking, Geoscope about the conflict in let's pronounce it properly, Nagorno-Karabakh in Armenia, not Armenia,
Nagorno-Karabakh.
That's it. That's the one. So that was meant to be a Russian peacekeeping project where they were meant to be protecting against Azerbaijan there, but Azerbaijan just went and walked in and took it, even killed like Russian soldiers taking it, and Russia basically did absolutely nothing to the point now where that entire like middle Asia area is now like, right, well, we can't depend on Russia. Russia's not going to do anything, so we're going to go and shop around and start looking for more allies on this front. So that has blown up any diplomatic stuff in there. You've seen situations like Syria because of the Ukraine war. The Russians couldn't come and help out Assad, which led to
Assad
again,
was toppled because of that.
Yeah,
Also,
so
Maduro in Venezuela. If this hadn't happened, the Russians would have kicked off badly about their man in not Havana, but their man in
I mean, you've also got again. I'm sure we'll get on to talking about in a moment. Iran. Iran buys a lot of military equipment from Russia. That's now the other way around.
And vice versa.
They are the Russians are now buying drones from Iran, but because of the situation in Russia, they're not reciprocating anymore. They're not sending their equipment to.
Also, there's a lack of expertise in Russia. Like all the experts are gone.
They've all gone again because of the war.
Left. They've all fucked off. And when it comes to drone warfare, they're having to buy it in. They're having to buy it in from
which is
Iran.
Why you get the whole Starlink situation that happened and how that went down.
It's all bodged together. Who was saying about them having like they had like cardboard on their fucking tanks?
Yeah, that was the whole thing. So
reactive armor, which is supposed to explode. If someone hits it to keep the explosion away from the people inside the tank.
Cardboard, even giving cardboard like body armor as well. For this, for like the equipment on this.
God.
The other interesting statistic, I think, I don't know if we talked about this before, railway repairs. So in Ukraine, if a railway gets bombed or anything like that, just a section of the track, the Ukrainians can repair it now pretty much within 24 to 48 hours. They can repair that. In Russia, it's taking 3 to 4 weeks to repair like damaged railway track and railway sections. So it's their logistics relies on trains in Russia, and if they are stopping that, it's proving to be a huge disaster. We are actually seeing the Russians revert to using donkeys and horses, which again in a modern war situation you wouldn't expect to be seeing an army using that. They're having to rely on North Korea as well. We remember when North Korea sent over a load of troops, and then Kim Jong-un got really annoyed because all those troops were being killed. So they've now been moved back behind the lines to do like logistics and other duties. So they're still there. They're buying like artillery shells from North Korea as well. That's now made South Korea also build up its own military awareness now as well, because they're worried about might North Korea decide to try something after this. And we'll maybe get on to talking about North Korea as well later, because there's fun stuff happening there.
Well, before we get on to that, Miss Paula Thomas has dropped a super chat in. I should have set the confetti for one super chat, shouldn't I? Because release the super chat, release the confetti. But it's 5 super chats today, so if we can get tonight, if we can get a few more in, I will launch the confetti cannon. Miss Paula Thomas wants to know, the only question in my mind is, will this turn out to be the first battle of World War III, or will whole war? I think we've already started World War III. I think World War III started in 2008 when Vladimir Putin rolled into, it was Mendeleev, whatever his name is, the president then, wasn't it? Because they did a little swapperoo for a few years where he pretended between 2008 and 2012 he pretended
he was president, or he was the prime minister, not president.
But Dmitry Mendeleev, or whatever the fuck his name was, he was president at the time, invaded Georgia just to see what would happen, took South Ossetia, took Abkhazia, took 1/3 of Georgia's entire territory, and no one did shit. No one did shit. Everyone just went, I don't know where that is. I don't care. What's it got to do with me?
No.
And the reason for that, And the reason for going after Ukraine was because in 2008, both of them said that they wanted to join NATO and they wanted to join the EU. When I went to Georgia in 2010, in February 2010, they were still reeling from this flash war that had just come and taken out, a lot of their territory. And there were EU flags everywhere and NATO flags. There was NATO banners like saying we want to join NATO. And that was 16 years ago now. 16 years ago this month.
Yeah, because it's people always go on about, oh well, this war wouldn't have happened if like NATO hadn't expanded east. All these countries weren't forced to join NATO. They went running to join NATO because they were constantly worried about that Russia was going to come back for them. There is a lot of historic trauma caused by like Russian occupation in these countries. In Eastern Europe. So the first opportunity they got, they went and they joined NATO because they were worried. You have to really wonder what would be happening to like the Baltic states if they weren't
part of NATO.
If they weren't part of NATO, what would happen? To them again, former really like rediscovering like their own national identity, their own local language, their own culture after like years of like Russian imperialism. It's crazy to think about if they weren't in NATO, what might have happened there. And a lot of people are talking about if this war does finish, Russia will finish this war with a very, very big army. And there are new military districts that they have created, which are very sort of Western facing. Does Russia try something else?
Well,
does it try and test the NATO alliance?
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. There's a city called Nara, literally on the border with Russia and Estonia. Does it just go in and just say, we're going to take that city? We're not going to take the full country. We're just taking that city. We're just moving the border.
But it's over the river.
Around the city.
The border is the River Narva, named after the city. It's. I mean that particular border post. I mean, it's like nothing you see anywhere else in Europe. It's got razor wire, and it's like it's going across the bridge. It's like a cage inside. This is 15 years ago. Even back then, it was like this is the end of the northern wastes of. But actually, it's the border with Belarus, isn't it? No, it is Russia up there. No, it's Belarus is a bit south of that. But yeah, it's not.
But wider conflicts as well in Africa, because this is involved, Africa, because obviously remember the
Wagner group went out and destabilized half the countries of Africa on purpose. Yeah. And they got rid of the leaders of Burkina Faso, of Gabon, of Mozambique. And they just went around destabilizing the fucking place.
Yeah, and of course they have basically taken people.
Yeah.
To fight in the war.
Yeah.
Just recently in South Africa, South Africa's managed to like repatriate like 1,000 people
who were lied to,
their own citizens. Yeah, they were lied to.
They were told they had a job working in a fucking packing factory in Vladivostok or something. They turn up and they're like, okay, that way the war's that way. Saz, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. It's very kind of you. Let's talk about the consequences of like NATO and Europe. I mean, we've got the new security order now. Defence spending has surged across EU states and in the UK. NATO, obviously, as we mentioned, expanded with the accession of Finland and Sweden. Like for years, we thought that Turkey would always override Sweden joining because Sweden was at the time being quite shitty towards Turkish immigrants. And there was a bit of a beef going on between the Swedish government and the government in Ankara in Turkey. But they managed to get through that, whatever that problem was. And they managed to get through it. And now Finland and Sweden have joined, which has doubled the length of the border between NATO countries and Russia. And Poland has become a major logistical and military hub. In fact, this has helped the economy of Poland like in a crazy way. The energy dependence that we used to have on Russia is completely gone. It's completely collapsed now. And Germany has reversed decades of military restraint. One of the reasons why at the end of World War II, the countries that did the best in the next 30 years after the war were West Germany and Japan. Why was that? Neither of them were allowed to have a proper army. So while we were spending a big chunk of our GDP, a big chunk of the money coming in from taxpayers on our military, on our Air Force and Navy and the Army, they were allowed a tiny little piss army, just to keep order in their own country, but they couldn't go and invade anyone else's. And they invested in people instead. They invested in companies and technology. And that's why by the 90s, Germany and Japan, I mean, if things had gone well for Japan after in the 90s, they would probably be the biggest economy in the world right now. They were on track to overtake America in the 90s, but then their economy stagnated because they don't like foreigners. And the only way they could get their economy to grow anymore is by getting lots and lots of immigrants to come and live and work in Japan. And Japanese people didn't like that.
They still don't. Like I say, that was reflected in the recent, general election and what the prime minister has been saying about that. Yeah. But yeah, the other thing I want to talk about was the was again going back to we've mentioned the Africa stuff. There's the North Korea stuff. Yes. North Korea very, very recently, Kim Jong-un, to no one's surprise, has been re-voted as the leader for another 10 years, Graham. Can you believe it?
Oh my
Can you
God.
believe another what? 10 years? He's that popular. He won by 100% of the vote.
I didn't know they have elections there. I thought he was just the leader for life, because his grandfather, who died in the 80s, he's still technically the leader of North Korea.
He's like the general secretary. I can't remember the position that they call it now, but it's like de facto. You are leader, yeah.
It's a necrocracy.
Yeah, but always remember, there's going to be an interesting transition period. When he dies, his only living heir is female.
Yeah,
at the moment, and he has been very, very desperately trying to get that acknowledged, like get that signed away and sealed off, to the point where he has gone and sided with more of the military factions that are like, no, we must, if we are going to reunify like the Korean peninsula, it's going to be through war, not diplomacy. And we have seen that play out for a very, very long time, with North Korea becoming ever more very militaristic in its style and some of the stuff that it has done. But the challenge for Kim Jong-un is that transition after he dies. Will they accept his daughter or not? Who knows? On that one, it's going to be a very interesting transition. And in Asia, there is a huge like thing about things happen in threes, that like after the third iteration you need to like scrap it and try something new. So that will be very interesting, because he is the third generation of his family to sort of be running that. So culturally that will be very interesting to see what happens there, but that's not going to happen for potentially some time yet. But who knows? That could be a very interesting transition period if that happens and that goes down in that way.
Sorry, I said 80s, and I actually the grandfather Kim Il Sung, he actually died in the 90s, 1994. He died. I've just put in the chat what the North Korea, because like Germany calls itself Deutschland, it doesn't call itself Germany. North Korea obviously doesn't call itself North Korea because that's an English name for it. It actually calls itself. Go and have a go at that. Chozon Min Yu Lin Min Gong Waguk. There you go. That's what it calls itself, which is cool. But yeah, if you go there, they call themselves the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, whereas South Korea calls itself the Republic of Korea, or ROK. And then in the same way, Taiwan calls itself the Republic of China, ROC, and China proper calls itself the People's Republic of China. So that's how you know where you are. Whether it's the People's or whether it's the Democratic or whether it's always funny when a country has the name Democratic in its title, because you look at it and go, really? Are you really democratic? But yeah, I don't know if North Korea will outlive Kim Jong-un. Um, but he's not that old, is he? He's only what, 50 or something, isn't he? Is he younger than me?
Oh no,
Fuck no, he's only 40. He's only
yeah.
42 or 43.
Yeah,
He's younger than
he's
me.
in his 40s, so he's not that
Could
old.
be another 40 years.
So yeah, it would be a long time before we see like the consequences. Because again, so far, his only living heir is his daughter. He's not had any more
Yeah,
kids, at least as far as we're aware. At least none of that have been introduced.
yeah.
So that will be a very interesting
Wow.
transition if that happens
Well,
on that one.
his dad lived to the ripe old age of 92.
So yeah,
Sorry,
he's got
no, I can't add up. 82, sorry,
Yeah.
82. Sorry, back to the class shoes. But yeah, I mean, this is changing the way that the whole of the world has worked for a long time. The post-war settlement is over, and the post-Soviet era doctrine, the peace dividend, as we called it, it's over. It's absolutely over, and compounded by Donald Trump getting in America, again. And, I do feel like war fatigue has slipped in now when we talk about this in Europe. Daily missile strikes are no longer dominating the headlines. Casualty figures sort of blend into background noises. Wars always do, as the longer they go on. It does seem a bit mad. Do you reckon this happened with World War One and Two? Do you reckon after like 3 years they were like, "Oh, we're bored of this now"?
Yeah, I mean, you look at like World War One, especially. There was a lot of people asking, and a lot of people predicting. In like even in 1918, they thought that this war was easily going to go on into like the 1990s and even 1920s, because of just the way it just seemed to be going on at the time. And in a way, World War One did go on in many ways until 1919 and 1920. There were conflicts that happened after. There was the Turkish Greek War that happened there. There was the Turkish War for independence that happened on there. There was the whole German Civil War that took place there. There was a lot of stuff that happened, of course, in the wake. The fall of Tsarist Russia and what happened there. So a lot happened in the wake of World War One. Peace didn't just magically happen. Overnight in 1918. A lot of stuff did continue on, and fighting did happen in many ways. And in some cases, 1919 was just as violent as 1918, even though World War One was officially over, meant to be over at that point. So yeah, it's an interesting parallel, but you don't know what would happen, like what's going to happen in many of these cases. You look at the military buildup that's happening in the Gulf of Aden, where a lot of people are now really suspecting that America is going to attack Iraq, not Iraq, Iran. Sorry. So yeah, it's you don't know what the consequences of this happen, because if they do strike, what's the objective? And then what's the outcome?
Yeah.
Of it. No one predicted, for example, like the rise of ISIS that happened. You had the whole Syrian civil war, how that has played out. Sometimes you cannot predict the outcome of many of these events that have happened throughout history.
Yeah.
You look at things like the French Revolution, how that spiraled into the terror,
they got rid of the king. And they got themselves
you
an
look
emperor.
at that and how that spread out into the rise of Robespierre and the terror that happened.
What happened to Robespierre in the end?
The rise of Napoleon, which resulted in a very violent period for Europe. The Napoleonic Wars were quite
as a direct result of the French Revolution, which was arguably a direct result of the American War of Independence a few years earlier, where it was let's get rid of the king.
Sometimes things can happen that you just do not know what the consequences of these things are going to be. You don't know. For example, let's say you bomb all like the military facilities in Iran.
Yeah.
And there's a revolution. Who leads that revolution? Is it led by like the hardline faction in there, do they take over,
Yeah.
and does Iran become even more hardline in the future?
Well, I
We
doubt it.
don't know.
I mean, people were calling for the Shah's son to come back,
Mm.
and a lot of people found that very surprising, especially people who are like, why would you want a fucking monarchy? The Shah's son is not a politician. He's not a diplomat. He's never worked in politics. He's gone on the record to say he doesn't want the job. But what he would do is be a unifying figure to transition the country into a democracy. Which, honestly, if they kept the Shah, it probably would have happened. People like to frame the 1979 revolution in Iran as, look, and I'm going to pull rank here. I've got friends who are Iranian in Iran, and I've been to Iran myself. Okay, so I'm a little bit more clued up on this. I like to think talking to actual people in Iran rather than what we're being told. And although the Shah was put in place by the British and the Americans, basically for the fucking oil right, he did bring in progressive policies. The thing that pissed the clergy off, the clerical class were pissed off because they were the biggest landowners in Iran. And essentially what he did was he nationalized all of the churches or the mosques and the land that the mosques were on, etc. And that really pissed off the clerical class. He took away their power, and then he took away their land, and they were really, really pissed. They formed an unholy alliance, what a term to use, with the students that were rising up in 1979 to complain about the Shah having way too much power, which was fair enough. I mean, their beef with the Shah was justifiable. Whereas the clerics, it was like, why don't we get all this free stuff anymore, you bastard? So, yeah, and that's how we ended up with the Iran that we're in today. Because, like you say, when the revolution, when the dust dies down, who's in charge? It wasn't the students; it was the fucking clerics who ran around telling everyone to bloody cover up and don't put their eyebrows.
If you look at
the
history of revolutions, it's very, very rarely bloodless. You look at like the separation of Czechoslovakia. That was very, very much a very amicable separation. And then you compare that with, of course, the break of Yugoslavia.
Well, Serbia and Montenegro were one country until 2007, and then they split into two. And that was amicable.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's now 7 countries. It used to be one country. It's now 7 countries.
Yeah.
That was probably never going to end well.
You can never fully predict like what's going to take over. I mean, again, you go back to like the French Revolution because it's the best example of people like generally thought that what they were going to get was some form of like moderating like force of a republic, or they were going to get some form of like constitutional monarchy, like in Britain. That was the prevailing thought at the time of potentially where they were going to get.
Same in Russia. Don't forget the revolution in France and the revolution in Russia, the two revolutions in 1917. It was only a few years after, in both cases, that the royals were killed.
Yep. And same for the English Civil War.
Same with the English Civil War, you're right.
No one
knew what they wanted. They were like, well, we want this, we want that, and should we keep the king alive?
Yeah, I don't know. One of the greatest interesting like what ifs of history is what if the parliamentary army rebelled against its officer class, because that was a potential threat that was going on at the same time during the time of like these negotiations, because the parliamentary army at the time had not been paid for a very long time, but they were still being kept stand up, and they were threatening to revolt because they wanted their own demands. They were talking about, at the time, not every Englishman could vote. They wanted the very revolutionary like thing at the time of every man should have the vote. In the UK, well, it's in the kingdom at the time. So that could have been a very interesting what if they had become more radical. What if they had gone through with their own revolution and taken over their own? It's a interesting period, shall we say. But it's never revolutions.
You can't guess. You can't guess what's going to happen.
Predict what's going to happen.
But do you know what is quite predictable? Democracies, that they're boring and predictable. And I think just people were bored. People just hit the, I don't know, the new year on the year 2000, and they just went, I don't want a future where people aren't at each other's throats. I don't want a future where everyone gets along. That sounds boring. Let's stir some shit up. Let's destroy the environment. Let's make the rain come down and the rivers flood, and let's make the forests burn. And it's just like, what the fuck is wrong with people? Like, why don't they want to have a planet where people just get along? And what I'm really encouraged by this year so far is Mark Carney in Canada saying small countries, medium-sized countries in across the Pacific, medium-sized countries in Europe, we will be the bridge between the two of you. Let's have a fucking trade agreement where we can just, rules of origin don't fucking matter. We'll just make our stuff and it'll be made in our union. And everyone's like, fuck, that's actually a very, very good idea, because that will give those medium-sized countries 1.5 billion consumers that can all sell stuff to each other at a discount rate. And that would be phenomenal. That would be absolutely phenomenal, because it would be big enough to take on China and India and America. I think that's possibly one of the best things that's come out of all this, because we are going to have to move away from the days where we could rely on Russia for energy in Europe, the days we could rely on America for military
I think
aid.
It has been the Trump effect. I think the thing you see in Europe at the moment is we can't necessarily rely on America all the time, purely because you got Trump, then you got Biden, where it was like stability and normalcy like restored, and then you got Trump 2.0, which has been even crazier, and then you've got people like JD Vance, that are like even more slightly crazier. Marco Rubio, been in talks, believe it or not, with as you said, you said earlier about the son of the Shah in Iran, actually talking with the son of I believe it was like Hugo Chavez, about having we're trying to like have like serious reforms over there, but basically being a full on like capitalist like revolution, removing communism from Cuba. That could have who knows what type of consequences for that area in particular on that one.
But yeah, I mean, there's some great quotes coming in from One Angry Pagan, from Terry Pratchett. Here's some advice, boy. Don't put your trust in revolutions. They always come round again. That's why they're called revolutions. Very true. And the other one is the children of the revolution were faced with the age-old problem. It wasn't that you had the wrong type of government, which was obvious. It was that you had the wrong kind of people, which is very true. I saw a streamer today, right, an American streamer, and she was talking about something that we always say on the left. It's like, I really wish the Democrats would stop trying to appeal to the people in the center ground and throw away votes from the people on the left. And I'm like, yeah. However, you have a fucking electoral college. And it's no good getting 99% of the vote in Greenwich Village. Do you know what I mean? There's no point in winning San Francisco and LA and New York and New Jersey by 100%, 110% if you're Vladimir Putin, right? There's no point, because you're only going to get the same number in the electoral college that they can possibly vote for. You're not going to get any more. It's all or nothing. Meanwhile, if you cannot get anyone in any of the red states to vote for you, you're fucked. You're not going to win. And this is the thing that Labour saw in the last election. And it's the reason why we had this argument all the time about, well, actually, Graham, in 2016, they had a greater vote share. And I'm like, it didn't matter, because the people who were voting for Labour in 2019 were all in these same constituencies. There's, 150 constituencies that Labour already had. They already had them. It wasn't necessary for them to change themselves to get into those seats. They could just stay as they were, which they did. Well, they didn't, obviously. They went a bit more right. But the idea of going more right-wing only makes sense because people are twats and people want to vote for right-wing things. And if they think that Labour or the Democrats in America are too left-wing, which is hilarious because the Democrats in America are just the Tories. and the Republicans are just like the fucking neo-Nazis or something. There's no left-wing party over in America. The most left-wing thing you'll get in America is Noam Chomsky, and he's a good mate of Jeffrey Epstein. So,
I mean, you've got people like Mandani over there. You've got like
yes.
AOC. There are like progressive people in the Democratic Party.
Because
things are changing.
They're in New England. He's in fucking New York. She's in New York. Well, I mean, perfect, brilliant. Those people for the mayor, for the for the senator, but for a presidential election, because there's people saying they're not going to vote for Gavin Newsom if he runs, right? Because he's not left wing enough. And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. Is this not bad enough? Insane. How bad does it have to get? And I think people are forgetting how bad it was with the fucking Tories now.
I still don't understand the argument of, I'm not going to vote in this election between like Kamala and Trump, because somehow Kamala Harris is going to be like infinitely worse than Trump. And I'm like, I'm sorry, considering what we've seen under this administration.
What was on the first administration? Yeah.
In what world is Kamala Harris doing that is somehow now worse than what Trump is doing?
I don't know, mate. I just think some people just don't want to think about it, and they just want to be ideologically pure, and they want to kick away anyone who's not doesn't 100% align with their beliefs. But this is the problem. If you try and make one group of people happy, generally speaking, you're going to piss off another group of people. You just can't keep everybody happy. But on the left, we keep stabbing ourselves in our, collective fucking dicks by going, do you know what? I'm not going to vote for them because they're not 100% aligned with me on absolutely everything, because I want to get rid of the monarchy and they don't want to get rid of the monarchy. Yeah, but everything else, do you like all the other stuff they're doing?
I've always said this. I really do not care about the monarchy. I think there are bigger fights to have like in this country than do we or do we not get rid of the monarchy. I want to see the voting
it's doing a good job of
taking
taking itself out, Ollie.
Like I want to see like the voting system get changed. I want to see like the House of Lords, be reformed. In fact, I've said this many times. I think our target for like the first target for reform should be the House of Lords.
Yeah,
it is primed for change, and you could do massive change and turn it into like a proper second elected chamber to do, which I think is something that we should do. I think the House of Lords
it's got to be the House of Britain. It's got to be the House of Britain.
And I think we really need to be doing. I think before. I think we do. It
needs to be the chamber that brings together the parliaments of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, right? And yes, we should have an English parliament. That's separate. We really should. I don't understand why we don't do this. I really don't, because there are certain matters that are just for England. Why are we dragging Scotland into this? Why are we dragging fucking Wales into it?
I think this is where like the regional mayors can I think really come into it, and I think there's a couple of like I think I've seen interesting arguments talked about what powers you could give regional mayors certainly in the future, because like I say, Andy Burnham has proved in Manchester just like how good having like a regional mayor can be. Same for Sadiq Khan in London, like how good he has been.
He's been fantastic. He's been absolutely fantastic.
He's
been the mayor more times than Dick fucking Turpin.
Yeah. We've got more mayors now in
Saz, thank you very much for the £2 super chats.
Hey.
We really need to get going because we're past half past and
okay, yep.
And Max has started.
Let's go.
But before we go, if we get 2 more super chats in the next minute or so, we can launch the confetti. But yeah, just to wrap up about Ukraine, what I wanted to ask was, do you see an end in sight for this conflict? Because when I was there a couple of years ago, as I mentioned on the channel before, talking to a police officer, and he was saying to me he thinks this is going to go on for another 10 years. Do you see any end in sight? Because
again, I always say this. I end up saying this every year. I said it last year. I hope 2026 is the end of of this war, but it has to come to an end when the Ukrainians decide that it wants to come to an end. They are the ones that should be deciding. We should be the ones backing them up at the negotiating table. It shouldn't be America and Russia going off into a room and deciding the fate of Ukraine. We'll see what Trump does this year as well. I have a very strange feeling he will end up coming back to Ukraine at some point. Again, in that point in the future. So.
Yeah. I think that the only way we can end this war is if Europe just stands united and tells Russia in no uncertain terms to fuck off. And that's what's going to happen. Militarily. Just like, why are we pussyfooting around here? Why? Kuwait wasn't part of fucking NATO. As far as I was aware, Bosnia Herzegovina wasn't part of NATO. Neither was Kosovo. We still sent the fucking NATO in, the K4 troops into... Sierra Leone wasn't part of fucking NATO. We still send troops... Iraq, the invasion of Afghanistan. I mean, like... This is the thing. It's like, oh no, we can't help because they're not a member of NATO. If they were a member of NATO, we'd be right in there and helping them out. I'm like, what does it fucking matter? Yeah. Our continent is being attacked by some invaders from outside, who some of them are from Russia, but some of them are from North Korea, some of them are from North Africa. And it's like, well, why are we accepting this? And all of these mealy-mouthed bastards like Donald Trump and that dickhead, what's his name, Nigel Farage, right? They fucking love this. They don't care. They just don't care. They're just like, whatever, Vladimir Putin, he's a very good man. He should be able to do what he wants. He's a very powerful man. We like powerful men. And it's like, wow, how much do you want to be subjugated? And all they go on about, especially Farage, all he goes on about is sovereignty. What's sovereign about allowing a country like Russia, a basket case like Russia, that has a GDP per capita hovering around that of St. Kitts and Nevis in the Caribbean? Why are we scared of them? Why? I don't get it. Like I said earlier, Ollie, if they had some fucking trick up their sleeve, if they had an ace in the hole, they would have shown their hand by now, and they haven't. This war really started in Georgia 18 years ago. I don't know. Anyway, I say we go out there and twat it. In the meantime, Richard, Kafefi donation, thank you very much. And Wheels of Darren says, £5 super chat, thank you. Build a new parliament centrally located. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. I think we should still have the British Parliament in London, although they do have to move out so they can fix the Palace of Westminster because it's falling apart. It's going to burn down if they don't. But yeah, having an English Parliament, I think would be a really good idea. More devolution?
Yep.
Sovereignty, says Richard. Yeah, I'm having a cup of lovely sovereignty. Anyway, listen, we'll let you go now. And if you go, oh God, we set up the Kafefi. We got the Kafefi.
Woo!
We got the Kafefi. 3, 2, 1, Kafefi. So yeah, thanks very much to everyone for joining us this evening. I'll be back in the morning at 9 o'clock. Have you got any shows lined up, Ollie, this week? What are you up to?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, all right. So can't advertise it.
Still just normal videos coming out on the channels. Always talking more about what's been going on reform locally. A lot of the budget stuff that's happening is pretty crazy, as you can imagine, on that front. So yeah, if you want to see more like what's happening on the reform front for these local councils, come along and pay us a visit. Yeah, and latest polling, I mean, in Gorton and Denton, for the election on Thursday, and I'll be staying up with people on Thursday night to watch the poll results come in. Right, from all voters, it's got the Greens on 28%, it's got Reform on 27%, and it's got Labour on 28%. So the Green and Labour are neck and neck, and Reform on 27%. It could go any of those three ways at the moment, which is, I mean, if the Greens win it, great, shot across the bow for Keir Starmer, because he's not taking the party in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. If Labour win it, okay, I'll take that over Refuck. But if Refuck win it, I'm going to be spitting fucking feathers. Anyway, so thanks very much for watching. Give us a like on the way out. You always like a like on this channel. And say hello to Max for us. You keep watching this, we'll shunt you over to Max. Apologise for your tardiness. You can blame me. It's all my fault. Wouldn't shut up. He wouldn't shut up. He was just trying to start World War III. He wouldn't shut up. I'll be back in the morning at 9 o'clock with Morning Brew. And until then, thanks for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye. Bye.